Gurmagat, Ceann and Minister. I'll focus on two primary areas. The first is in relation to the skills shortages that relate to renewable energies, particularly wind energy, but also apprenticeships more generally. In late 2021, the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment published Skills for Zero Carbon, which was produced by their expert group on future skills. It was looking to assess in exact detail how many people doing what kind of jobs would be needed to deliver our renewable energy, retrofitting and electrical vehicles by 2030. For example, they estimate by the end of 2030 we'll need an additional 552 wind turbine technicians and more than 1,300 ship's crew and officers for wind alone. Across the three categories mentioned above, they estimate more than 1,700 electrical engineers, more than 100 ecologists and many other professions that will be primarily through apprenticeships rather than universities, such as electrical fitters, plasterers, carpenters and joiners. One of the real challenges that we have in relation to renewable energy is that it's seen very often as primarily an issue for the Department of the Environment, Climate and Communications, but the skills and domestic supply chain are as much the responsibility of the Department of Enterprise as they are of anyone else. There is great work being done by organisations the like of Wind Energy Ireland, who run a bridging training programme which helps job seekers with suitable professional backgrounds to get into industry, with an intensive 1-month training programme followed by work placement in industry. They've been putting 30 turbine technicians through the programme each year, which is significant, but again, in the context of what we will require, an awful lot more is needed by, again, as I said, by 2030, we'll need an additional 552. So there is good work underway, but there are two important factors to note. Firstly, we're not training anywhere near enough to meet the demand that we need to by the end of 2030. And secondly, there's no guarantee that we can hold on to the ones that we do have. We neighbour many economies where the renewable energy sector is much more developed and which will have significant competitive advantages over us potentially if we're competing for people with those skills. A skilled turbine technician has a skills set that he or she can take almost anywhere, and potentially there'll be opportunities in Scotland or Britain or Denmark or other places like that. There's a huge shortage throughout Europe of the kind of roles we need. So, for example, if you have Scottish wind farms moving ahead of us in their development pipeline, they're going to be coming here to look for engineers and turbine technicians to work in Scotland. The other issue I wanted to address is the whole issue of apprenticeships. I have raised on many occasions here and in the committee the cultural issue that exists, and I've made the point that there are many schools, and sometimes we measure the schools by, we shouldn't indeed, the amount of people who are going to university, and there are many schools that are not, because they haven't had the opportunity to send enough young people to university, but there are also schools that are sending too many, and there are young people going into our universities that would be far more suited to taking on apprenticeships. And I think there's a cultural issue that needs to be addressed. I think there is a broad cross-party awakening to the fact that that does need to be addressed. I will acknowledge that yourself and Minister Harris, I think, are aware of the need to address that, but we will see over the course of time how that works through. But that needs to go into the schools and with parents particularly as well. But there's also the need to look at how we improve and freshen up current apprenticeships requirements. I've previously asked ETB to look at the area of, in my own area, to look at the area of maths support for people who are looking to do an apprenticeships, but where the maths requirement can be a barrier for many apprenticeships, for example, instrumentation. Awarding maths tutor hours to youth services would be a solution. There are plenty of young people who could enter apprenticeships with a few extra supports, and youth projects are one possible site of support. There's also the whole issue of day release or block release. I think we do need to look. I think there are different approaches that will suit different employers that can sponsor apprenticeships. Many smaller employers find it very, very difficult to manage the 4 days on the job and 1 day off the job. That would much prefer, I suppose, the approach of having the apprentice for 4 days and 1 day off the job instead of the block months of 6 months and 12 weeks, which can be very challenging for small tradespeople. And just finally, I've raised this issue before. in some areas in particular where of high demand, such as electrical apprenticeships and instrumentation, because the pay in industry is so high, it's very, very difficult to find instructors and for people to be able to clear the backlogs. I'm not sure what the solution to that is. I think industry potentially themselves have a role to play, because obviously pay for instructors is part of public sector pay talks. But is there something that they can do to assist in clearing the backlogs, ensuring we have an adequate supply of people coming through high demand trades such as electricians and instrumentation as well?
Now we go to Deputy Boyd Barrett.